Hi, and welcome to today's episode of this podcast. Today, I am going to give you a little bit of an update and also a bit of a teaching as well after that. If you follow me, you may have seen that over the last, especially sort of 2, 3 weeks, things have slightly changed for me in terms of how I run my business. I found a more, let's say, aligned way for myself to run my business. Um, what I sort of call, like, I've created my soul business, which is why this podcast is now called Soul Sessions, where I'll be talking to you about creating the business that you really truly want, that is aligned and that is sustainable and doesn't have to be just one way fits all. But I'll go into that in a little while. So, first of all, why I'm going to start with my why and why I've changed it. Um, the way that I was running my business just did not feel aligned to myself. It was very much for me in the masculine um energy, and it had to be done in a certain way almost. Um, I was doing things strategy wise that just did not feel right for me, which then also meant that if it doesn't feel right to you, then it doesn't really work. The energy behind it is not quite the same. So I was doing all of these things, which work for a lot of other people, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with the strategies. It just did not align with me. Um, so I was mainly just doing those. I guess I was told to do it. Other people were doing it, were successful, and I didn't really listen into what I needed, what, my body, my soul, my everything was telling me to do. So, um, as soon as I changed things like strategy and just generally how I do things and what I did and how I did it, I'll tell you in a minute. But as soon as I changed things, thing like my business and everything else in my life, really felt aligned and it seemed to flow. Things like fell into place. Blocks that or things that I thought were blocks just literally just melted away, and it's just like, oh, it's not a block anymore. Um, I feel more me, I guess, within my business. Because I've tapped more into my feminine side. Um, I'm generally quite a creative person, despite me not necessarily thinking that, but I know I'm quite a creative person. I like to create. And generally that has become easier again because I'm listening into what I want to create, and put out into this world as well. And then I do combine this with strategies with the more masculine side of things that actually do work for me, or make them work for me. Um, and I've also connected to like a bigger vision, like a much, much bigger vision. And this vision keeps growing almost on I feel like a daily basis. So this is sort of the why I've changed my business. So as I say, if you follow me, you would have noticed the change in content that I put out there. Um, so yeah, let me just sort of start talking about how I created this, what I call soul business. So I first of all started off reviewing absolutely everything essentially, from my like social media posts to like the strategy behind the social media. Um, had a look what's working, what's not working. Um, like sales website. I reviewed every single thing within my business. And then I had a look at it and sort of, reviewed it and looked at it and really dove into number one, does that align with me? Does this work for me? Um, because some strategies or some things within my business may align for me, but they do not work, which is fine. That can be rectified. That's easily rectified. The I guess the other part or the flip side of that is if it works, but it doesn't feel aligned. Though I do want to sort of say if it's not aligned with you, I want to question if it works 100%. But that's something for you. If you actually want to create your soul business, that's something that you have to really look at what works, what doesn't work. Does it feel aligned? Yes or no? And then sort of focus on the things that are aligned with you. So as I said, I was doing things strategy wise, like sales strategy wise, that just did not align with me. For me, because it didn't align for me and the energy behind it wasn't like great. It did not work, which is not a surprise. Um, I actually got caught out on it. Well, not really caught out on it, but um, yeah, let's just say it just did not work. Um, but if look at things. So, for example, I was posting previously. My main sort of focus for social media, I didn't actually have one. I had multiple. I still do, but not as much now. So I had Instagram was my main focus. Facebook, I always cross posted. Um, LinkedIn, I posted every single day as well. And Pinterest, and I obviously have my email list and then my podcast. So to create like real content that I actually want to share and actually also aligns with other people, I just had to sit down and really sort of see what I want to do. It's not necessarily what other people want to see from me, because one of the things that I've learned within this whole process is what do I want to share with the world? Because if I want to share it with other people, then I know it's aligned. I'm giving real value to other people and really able to help them grow their business, which is what it's all about. So, and I sort of looked at that at my social media strategy, and I was so I knew it didn't work, partly also because so Instagram was my main platform, I guess. I don't particularly be the biggest fan of Instagram. Again, because coaches, etc., they are on Instagram. So I was sort of thinking, I've got to be on Instagram. But actually, no, I don't. And I don't use Instagram half as much anymore. I still post because there's still value that I want to share on Instagram, but it's not, I guess I'm not creating posts for create content for Instagram. It's content created for other platforms. And then I just take bits and pieces because it's usually too long. I like writing. Um, and Instagram just does not give me let's say just the space to write that with things that I want to share. I'm not necessarily the best person to keep things concise. Either it's super concise or it's like super long. There is almost no middle ground for me. So I do still use Instagram and I still post to it because I think there's valuable stuff that I can share with people, but it's not my main focus. So my main focus has switched completely to Facebook because I feel like I can make real connections there rather than on Instagram where I feel like about a million bots about, etc. And it's all just about the numbers game, which I guess is another thing that I stopped doing. I stopped looking at like at all of the numbers. I just stopped. Um, I used to check my numbers daily, and essentially that was driving me crazy. So I do it on a monthly basis anyway. I just really deep dive on a monthly basis and review what's working, what's not working. That hasn't changed. But instead of doing it daily, I still sort of keep an eye out on a weekly basis. Just Pinterest, for example, is another one of my platforms that I use. I actually like using. So, and I like creating content for that. So I do keep an eye on it just to see what's kind of again what's working for the business and what's not working. So generally, as I just said, with for the social media strategy, it's the best example. Um, I reviewed that, saw what didn't work, and then I changed it so that like now Facebook is my main platform. Um, and I really try generally within my business at the moment, keep things as simple as possible. Um, just so that it stays aligned to me, because as soon as it gets complicated, it's there's a whole different energy behind it again. So I guess one of the best examples for that is the other day I was creating essentially a sales page, which I've just done in Google Docs, which works perfectly because I don't need to. I'm changing my website at the moment anyway, so I can't really do any updates to it. So and it's on a Google Doc again, I can just write without thinking about, oh, I need to make this look pretty, etc. Because that's just things that completely distract me. And as I just said, I quite like writing. So um yeah, so I created this Google Doc with as a sales page, and then I was trying to essentially create something in my CRM so that people can pay, but it just was not working. To be fair, I was spending way too much time trying to sort that out. But I think I want to say probably after about 20 minutes, I was like, I'm just going to make this real easy for myself as well as for my clients. And just got a Stripe link, created the checkout in Stripe, put the Stripe link in there, sorted. So it's super, super simple. It's like my sales page is literally a Google Doc with a link to my Stripe card. So people can just check out and pay without, too much hassle, which is for me, and this is completely different for everyone, but for me, this is what my soul business is like. Is I just wanted things to be for myself as well as for my clients to be as simple as possible. Um, and that also means that you don't have to, stick to like specific strategies. I was doing a training the other day, and it was talked about not doing discovery/sales calls, and I'm just like, just because they weren't doing that was working for them, which that's fine. Sales calls work for some people, it doesn't work for others. I I'm not with the sales calls or discovery calls, time is a big issue. So I only work 2 days essentially when my daughter is in nursery, where I can actually have calls. I do work other times as well when she's around, but I can't have calls then. So sometimes my diary, depending on how booked up it is, you might have to wait a week or two to actually have a call with me. Now, I try to do business the way that, you know, I buy, etc. So if I would have to wait a few weeks for a discovery call, for example, just to potentially ask a few questions, that doesn't necessarily work for me. If I, however, have access to them via some kind of messenger or chat where I can just ask my questions or have, talk to them about my concerns. And if it's a bigger conversation to be had, that's fine. You can take it on a call. But if it's just a quick question that I had, let's say it's for example, a workshop they want to purchase, and I want to know if there's a replay because I can't find that information anywhere. I don't need to have a call about this. I can just message them just to see, yeah, just to see. And the same for any other things that I sell, I guess. You don't necessarily have to have the sales call, and just to have that within that training that I did to have that light bulb moment. Oh, yes, I can actually do business on my own terms, and I don't have to follow what everyone else is doing. I can keep it as simple as I want it to be, essentially. That was a big light bulb moment for me, um, which really has almost revolutionized the way that I do business. Um, again, I don't have to, keeping it so simple for me is for myself is so important. Um, because at the end of the day, I do want to build a less hustle or no hustle. Actually, I don't even want less hustle. It's no hustle business. So the simpler it is, the better. And that goes for everything. Like just a strategy, like it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be super simple. In one of my client calls the other day, we were sort of talking about goals for the week, etc. Before we meet again, and it was just like sort of you know going through some of the things, and then I was sort of it's like, okay, fine. Look at what your actual non-negotiables are for the week and have those as your goals. So, for example, that could be your email list, that could be outreach to some leads, whatever your non-negotiables are for the week. Schedule those in, and then everything else or anything else, you know, that those are like nice to have. I mean, I've got about there's always within business, there's always so many things to do. No question about that. Um, but and especially if you feel overwhelmed by that whole to-do list, look at your non-negotiables. See, do those do those first. So that might be your email list, your social media posts. If you have a podcast, maybe recording a podcast, or if you have a blog, write a blog post. Whatever it is, what your non-negotiables are for every single week. Like book those in, write those down, and then we all have like launches or evergreen stuff that we are putting out there. Work all of that around it, and just keep it simple. Sometimes we like to make things a lot more complicated than it needs to be. So if with your to-do list, just have a look at your non-negotiables, put those in every single week, even if you block yourself some time out for that, and then do those, and then see what with if you have some spare time, some extra time, do some of the other things that on your on the general sort of to-do list. That's how I do it, because I obviously know when I'm launching what, or when like this podcast, for example, I know that goes out every Tuesday, so I obviously need to have a podcast to put out there every Tuesday. So that's one of my non-negotiables, same as like, for example, my social media posts. But essentially that's sort of reviewing, changing, making it simpler. Those are sort of the 3 steps that I did to start to create my soul business. I'm sure there are lots more things that needs changing. Lots more tips in the following sort of weeks that I can give you on how you can create your soul business. But generally, if you feel that something isn't quite working within your business, or it doesn't feel aligned, just have a real good look at what's going on. And then again, just review it, change it, simplify it. That simple. There, I said it. But this was like the little bit of the update that I had. So I'm changing my this podcast alongside with like pretty much everything else that I'm sort of doing. I'm doing business coaching, so it's now spiritual business coaching, which is just a combination of spiritual and practical methods and approaches to really grow your business in an aligned way, because that's what we want. We want to be aligned with our business rather than just, just constantly have like our masculine side or head on being our masculine energy. We need to be in our feminine energy as well. So that's the big goal, isn't it? So I've got some super exciting podcasts coming up, collaborations, and people coming onto the podcast to talk to me, which I'll be recording soon. So, and then I also have what I'll still be doing is like once a month, a transformation meditation. So if there's anything in general you want to hear on this podcast, but also in this moment specifically to the meditation, if there's anything in specific that you want to hear, email me at jen@jenanthony.co.uk. I'll put the email into the show notes as well. And yes, thanks so much for listening today with this new podcast called Soul Sessions with Jen. Until next Tuesday, have a lovely week. Thank you. Bye.